Hey YouTube, petey twofinger here explaining the update. I just re-uploaded an album I recorded in 2017, which is called Minor Technical Difficulties. Basically, the idea behind the upload is that it's the album on its own is it's a dozen or so songs that have sound effect beds that go in between the pieces of music. So I would record a song with a drum beat, and then I would use synthesizers and make an eerie or atmospheric piece of music that would begin right when that piece would end, and it would carry you into the next piece. Okay, so as a whole, like you have to sit down and watch the entire thing, which isn't always convenient. So for me to come back a couple years later and say, here it is all chopped up into pieces. Well, rather than really chop it up finally, what I did was I cut it to where it seemed to make sense for me. So there tends to be an intro and a song, an intro and a song. It kind of goes like that. So if you're curious about how the album was actually recorded, I used a CD of drum loops, which was Joey Kramer, the drummer from the rock band Aerosmith, had released a CD of drum loops, and they set his drum kit up and mic'd it, and he would play a little bit, and they would chop those up. And I found that to be well recorded, uh, pretty aggressive drumming that fit well for the style of music that I wanted to record. So what I would do is piece together those loops and make a drum track. Um, Write the song around the drums, meaning I would listen to these drums and kind of hear something in my head, and then pick up a guitar and play along with that, and then eventually piece those drums together where I'm sitting here on this computer, and then I would export them to another computer that's in this room that's set up with a recording interface. So I used a pair of tube mic preamps. They were really cheap. They're not good preamps. Do the tubes even help? I don't know. They're ART studio mic preamps. They cost around $50 new. You want to pay. You want to get them used. You can usually find one for $25 any day of the week in the Craigslist section. So yeah, I had a couple of those tube preamps. They put phantom power out, which is another nice thing. And I, at one point, I remember wanting to use a phantom powered mic with the Digitech 300 Vocalist, and that device does not pass phantom power. So I asked around, and my buddy, guitar player, lent me his ART tube preamp. And then I was like, you know what, this is such a cool thing. And it's this little mic preamp. It puts out phantom power, and it's cheap. It runs off a little wall wart. And I had one of those, and I bought myself another one to have a stereo pair. So this way, I didn't have to set up a mixing board. So everything was done on uh, Windows 7 computer. I used a DAW called Adobe Audition, which is an old piece of software. It's 32-bit. I had a hardware remote so I could hit record, rewind, delete, and play. All of those important features that you need to access when you're recording. I had that on a remote. So I had a stool next to a rack which had a pair of mic preamps and an equalizer, and then some other outboard gear that I ended up not using. I have a noise gate, and all of the guitar was recorded using a Fernandez Stratocaster copy with a Roland GK2. So it was all done digitally. Um, I used a Roland VG8, which is an old Roland flagship guitar modeling processor. So I went through that VG8 and I forget how it went. I think I had a note piece of paper with my favorite sounds written down. I had went through and auditioned the sounds, and then I knew like which one of the 12 strings that I really liked the best, the sound effect patches where they were at, and so because it's kind of massive, it had the expansion on it, and I didn't go digital in. I went on regular. You can use a light pipe or fiber optic cable coming out of that. I didn't bother with that. I went through coming right out of the thing, right and left output, right into those preamps, and then into a mixer. An EQ, excuse me, an old hi-fi EQ that was 21 bands per channel. So it's kind of a big EQ. And then I was able to kind of adjust some of those frequencies coming out of that thing. And I did sculpt those tones. So there's some stuff that you'll hear on that album that sounds synthy or guitar synthish. That's just a Roland VG8. It's just a Cosm modeling. It's excellent. So for the bass, I would switch off and come around and have an electric bass hooked up through a very affordable, a $20 USB interface called a Line 6 tone port, and that's the guitar port, excuse me. It's the original guitar port, the first one they came out with. And then I would use like their stock software and dial in a bass sound. Sometimes I use some overdrive, sometimes I use auto wah, sometimes I would multi-track the bass and have play every other note and have them alternate, and then have a center accent note with a distortion and an auto wah. I've done that trick before, but pretty much I think it was pretty straightforward, the bass recording. And then once I had all the guitars and the basses done, the song was basically finished. It's guitar instrumentals, and then I would use a MIDI keyboard, a small MIDI keyboard, and I would use Reaper and soft synthesizer programs to play and record multi-track these sound beds that would go in between. I would know, okay, well this song ends in A, so I would try to base something in A, and the next song starts in D, so I would maybe have it modulate from A up to D. And then I kind of placed everything. I tried to really stay in the same decibel range when I recorded each track. Like I had mental notes like -3 dBs, -6 dBs, whatever it was, and so I tried to do a format for everything. So when I went to do them, because my source audio, the source drums, were recorded by the same studio, they were all at one level, which really made it much more conducive as a piece. Like if you listen to the next album that I recorded, which is called Digitally Delayed, it's more all over the place. And getting those songs to master to sound the same was much more of a challenge, because I was just picking any old drum loop or custom program drums or whatever for the drums, and that proved to really make it much more difficult to get a final mix. Like basically pretty much I was going along. It was January, and I like to record in January, at the end of the beginning of the month, like typically around the 7th of January. I should really get going and start plugging stuff in and get towards experimenting to lay down some tracks, and I'm going to be doing that again this year. Last year was a double album. It was a little bit longer. My wife played the bass on those tracks. She laid down all the bass tracks in 4 hours. I think this year I'm going to play the bass, and I'm thinking about implementing the acoustic guitar. I've got a really nice delay pedal here called the Moore Ocean Machine, which is a dual delay with a real spacious sounding reverb. So I'm thinking about utilizing that where I didn't have much reverb. That, to me, reverb really, it's a noob mistake. It's too much reverb on your tracks. Now we'll see. Like, you never know till you get in and record everything what you're going to get. I may end up not doing is. But I was thinking of this year trying more acoustic guitar, and also, which is, of course, this gets more complicated on the recording. We're talking about an open condenser mic, and I live in this apartment with people who are really loud in the building, and trucks coming and going with the beepers on and stuff. So we'll see how it works out. I very well may not go through that process. I very well may not even record another album this year. We have to see. It depends on my health if I can do it. Because the fact of the matter is, I do suffer this chronic pain. I'm not kidding about that, and it's at a point where it's almost like why I don't need to prove anything to myself. Okay, I've got a dozen plus CDs full of mastered music that I've recorded. I know I have risen above my handicap, but I really love doing this, and I love hearing what I can create. Now, last year's album, I had written all that material and showed that to Donna. We were playing all that in the duo, and that's what I recorded. The year before this album that we're talking about now, Minor Tech, I didn't. I wrote that all specifically just for this album, and I think that's what I'm going to do again. I'm going to just write new material, because it once I get in there and okay, we're going to write now, it just kind of comes, and it's not like, oh my goodness, I've got to write a song. It's not. It just happens. You just put it together, you know. So it should be fun this year. I'm looking forward to making it fun, and maybe not pressing myself so hard as far as nose to the grindstone. In the past, I've just been like, wake up and start working on it and never take a break till it's done. And I think that's detrimental to the final product. You know, we did have a bit of a tragedy. We lost our house pet in Minor Technical Difficulties, and that's right at the very end of that album. We lost our Gusty, our cat died, and he was really had bonded with me, and so we were really tight. You know, he was my buddy, and he got sick real quick right at the end of working on this thing, and to me it was kind of like I hadn't done any music for a while. I hadn't recorded anything for a long time. The last thing that I recorded was really monumental for me. It's got vocals, and it's a very personal thing called Can't Compete, and that dealt with a lot of family issues that represented me kind of cutting bait and moving on, and not letting certain people who had tried to manipulate me and harm me have that power over me anymore. And it really worked well, and as a piece it was monumental. The only thing I could kind of analogize it to would be Roger Waters' Wall album. And so that's a really fantastic thing that I did that to me represented something that I would never be able to even get near it, as far as how good it was, how good it came out. And so I just wasn't interested in recording anything. And then I got all ready to do this. I did it, and of course right at the end my buddy dies, and that was a really rough week, and that's reflected in the end of the album. So it holds a very deep emotional connection with me, and also that it's not pleasant for me to go back and experience this album. I can listen to some of it, and then I know that what's coming at the end, and I gotta bail on it. So that's the story of Minor Technical Difficulties. Again, I've shut the comments off of my channel because of constantly being thumbed down and being bullied by a group of people who have made it up their mind that I'm the target. I'm the new guy to pick on. I'm not sure who all is doing this. I've just been blocking people all day. I'm blocking people. So if you're blocked and you're really a good fan of me, I guess I would think, gee, if you sat through this whole video, I could probably trust that you're not one of the people who's constantly thumbing down. You can get a hold of me and we can talk it out, but chances are I'm going to be just consistently blocking more and more people until I'm able to remove the ban on the thumb up and down and not instantly receive thumb down on every single upload. So that's it. That's minor technical difficulties. Enjoy and look forward to the new album coming out in 2020. It should be uploaded sometime in March.